The secrets of Cairo are as vast as its ancient underground. From the oldest pyramid in the world,
you can see how fragile all of this rock really is. Dry as a bone, ready to come down.
To the most important discovery since King Tut's tomb.
This cemetery contained 10,000 mummies.
10,000 mummies.
Covered with gold.
If you follow in the footsteps of pharaohs and warlords,
You gotta stay right on the wall or we're going down in there too.
Stick to the wall. Stick to the wall.
you may never leave the underground.
I'm Don Wildman. I'm in Cairo, Egypt, a city flooded with ancient secrets. This sprawling capital is home to the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, and countless remains of early Egyptian civilization. But the artifacts and monuments so familiar to millions of Cairo residents and tourists hardly scratch the surface, because beneath the teeming streets of old Cairo, beneath the desert sands, are the 5,000-year-old mysteries of godlike pharaohs and the battle scars of invading empires and bloody holy wars.
Today, Cairo sprawls across the River Nile, a teeming 21st century capital. But in the desert west of the river lie the cities of the dead, Giza and Saqqara, the ancient burial sites of the pharaohs. For thousands of years, the kings of Egypt built magnificent palaces to house their souls for all eternity. The pyramids.
No monuments in the world are more recognizable than the Great Pyramids of Giza,
The only remaining of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
These massive tombs still tower over modern Cairo. But not far away, the very first pyramid ever built, a full century before these at Giza, is equally impressive underground. It's called the Step Pyramid.
I'm meeting with archaeologist Ashraf El-Maghrabi, who will take me into the world's oldest pyramid. It was built for King Zoser, the second pharaoh of ancient Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It was a newly united nation seeking to show off its wealth and power.
Look at this, baby, man.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
We are in front of the first and oldest pyramid.
Exactly how old?
It's about 2700 BC.
Okay, so that's well over 4,000 years old.
That's right.
4,700 years old. Now, I'm looking at a structure that looks like a staircase, yes?
Yes, because the pharaohs were believing, after the death, the soul wanna climb the stairs.
But this was the first time that anyone had ever thought of doing this,
That's
yes?
right. That's why we believe Imhotep was a genius architect.
Imhotep was the king's minister, a doctor, priest, and the architect of the Step Pyramid. He began constructing a traditional burial tomb known as a mastaba, a space dug out from underground rock and then covered by a low, rectangular mud brick building. This had been the preferred structure for burying kings and pharaohs for ages. But a traditional monument wasn't good enough for Imhotep. He wanted to ensure his king would get to heaven. So he began to build a stairway to the sky, hoping to create something that would last forever. Instead of using mud brick, he used stone. Creating ramps made of sand, he moved the massive stones, eventually piling up to 6 layers, or steps, until it reached nearly 200 feet. He then covered it in gleaming white limestone, long since worn away and stolen. It took 20 years and 20,000 workers to build the Step Pyramid. But the real engineering triumph is hidden from view. While the famous pyramids at Giza have no more than 3 chambers and a handful of tunnels, the Step Pyramid, built 100 years earlier, has 3.5 miles of tunnels and chambers, 90 feet below the surface. It's not open to the public, but we have special access.
Think about this. We're going underneath a 5,000-year-old pyramid, the oldest of them all. Everything from the pyramids of Giza through all the great monuments of the ages, even the Washington Monument, owes itself to this structure. But what you see up here is nothing compared to what's below. This is sort of beyond cool.
So you can see the atmosphere. We are now underneath the pyramid. We are inside the heart of the pyramid.
A main passageway led us down into a labyrinth of smaller tunnels, chambers, galleries, and shafts. And it's all designed around a central shaft that leads down to a 50-square-foot burial chamber, the most important room in the structure.
There's a lot of active archaeology going on here, obviously a very valuable site. So we have to respect it and not get lost and not die. That would ruin everything.
Death was the engine driving this amazing feat of engineering and construction.
If you want to understand everything, you have to study Egyptian mythology because everything's come from mythology.
Sure, yeah.
This is why they built the pyramid from hard stones to live forever. But they were believing, you know, the afterlife, it's eternity for them.
Sure.
The Egyptians of King Zoser's time believed in a physical existence after death. All of this was a support system, providing comfort and protection from the greatest threats to their eternal rest: grave robbers.
You're saying that he actually intended these different these different tunnels to be a labyrinth that could fool someone.
That's right, to fool the robbers. You want to keep his mom away. And also he's believing if you want to be resurrected to afterlife, you have to suffer. You have to go through many tunnels, you know. You have to go from this and this and this, and you have to get closed, and you have to suffer a lot. And after this, you will be resurrected again.
We knew we were finally near the main burial shaft when we reached Zoser's treasure chamber. It was a room that once held piles of gold and precious gems. Zoser believed these treasures would accompany him in the afterlife. The glittering walls would have been elaborately decorated with rows of blue tile and limestone.
Here, this remains of the faience here.
Oh, there it is.
The small part of it.
So it was a big tile.
Yes.
That would have been pretty much what the entire place was encased in.
Yes, it was blue.
If you come in here with a torch, you're suddenly in a blue sky.
That's right. And some blocks from the ceiling. Can see the star here.
All right.
What will be in the sky? Stars.
Yeah, exactly.
After an hour of walking through narrow tunnels and down steep, crumbling shafts, we had reached the center of the Step Pyramid, 90 feet below the surface, where we found the last traces of the man who inspired this monument.
So we are entering now the burial chamber of our pharaoh, Zoser.
This is all still his grave under here?
Yes, he's a sarcophagus.
Is he still in there?
No, we didn't find his mommy.
Elaborate security systems and miles of tunnels didn't work. Eventually, over thousands of years, determined grave robbers found the king's treasures, including the most essential item, the body itself. All that remains is a shattered sarcophagus. Believed to be the vessel for the soul after death, the body was carefully preserved as a mummy, locked inside a series of coffins and enclosed in a huge stone case. Lowering the 40-ton granite sarcophagus through the 90-foot overhead shaft took another stroke of genius from Imhotep, the architect. He had his workers fill the shaft with sand and place the sarcophagus on top of the pile. Then he released the sand into additional side shafts. The central shaft slowly emptied out, and once all the sand had been completely removed, Zoser's sarcophagus was left standing in the burial chamber, deep beneath the floor of the Step Pyramid.
Look down here. This piece of granite right here is actually the lid of the sarcophagus, of Zoser's sarcophagus. And over here is the sarcophagus, this giant piece of granite, which I guess if you keep excavating, you'd find the opening of it. That's the point of all of this effort above us. This entire pyramid is built for that guy, for that box. All right, 30 more feet down this way, the Queen's burial chamber.
Unlike the pyramids at Giza, inside the world's first pyramid, King Zoser's 11 wives and many daughters were all buried with him. They too have disappeared, the victims of grave robbers.
Look, this huge, tons of rock here, which has been carved out. This was actually the burial chamber ceiling right here. It collapsed down. And this, above my head, is the burial shaft. So this goes up 120 feet. And that's how they got the sarcophagus down here, into this space here. You can see how fragile all of this rock really is. Dry as a bone. ready to come down.
After nearly 4,700 years, the world's oldest pyramid is crumbling. But engineering a stairway that reached the sky and a labyrinth that snaked deep beneath the earth without bulldozers, cranes, or modern machinery was an achievement that launched an age of monument building and changed the world forever.
When you think about it, how much of history really dates back to this very structure? Not only the Giza pyramids down the road here, but any building of size throughout the ages, the Greek temples, the medieval castles, right into our own age of skyscrapers. Everything comes back to this, when this brilliant architect decided to build a building that went for the sky. But really, what's up there, above ground, doesn't compare to what's down here below.
Coming up next, religious writing 2,000 years older than the Dead Sea Scrolls.
You're really looking at the history of writing here as well.
Yes.
And later, ground zero of the Arab battle for Egypt.
They knew if they could get this fortress, they would kill Rome.
The Step Pyramid ushered in a new age of monument building in the world. Thanks to a popular king, a booming economy and trade, Egypt was in a golden age, and so were its pyramids. But the good times wouldn't last. 3 centuries later, drought and corruption brought ancient Egypt into a kind of dark ages. The pyramids were looted, the kingdom was divided, and pharaohs no longer had the power and influence to build great palaces in their city of the dead. But the journey into the afterlife still meant the world to them. So without the stairways to heaven, the pharaohs needed something else to help guide them safely into the next life. So they adopted religious text, literally magical spells, inscribed in a sacred code.
After King Zoser built the world's first pyramid in Saqqara, the sacred tombs of the pharaohs littered the desert west of the Nile. But when their royal tombs were looted and the kingdom began to crumble, the pharaohs needed to find another way to pass through to the afterlife. A mysterious code that remains the oldest religious text in the world. I'm rejoining archaeologist Ashraf El-Maghrabi to go down into the heart of the pyramid of King Titi, a pharaoh who ruled more than 300 years after King Zoser, to get a rare look at ancient Egypt's instruction manual for entering heaven.
Titi pyramid, it looked like a pile of sand from outside.
Exactly. So this mound of sand is actually the pyramid.
Yes.
When King Zoser built the first pyramid around 2700 BC, he could afford thousands of laborers and tons of stone. But by the time the pharaoh Titi began to build his tomb, war and famine had drained the pharaoh's resources. So they cut corners. Simple underground chambers were dug, then concealed by a massive pile of rubble and covered with a limestone facade. As the centuries passed, the facade was destroyed and the pile underneath crumbled into a shapeless mound.
So let's get down.
Yes, we are heading now to see the entrance of the pyramid. Watch your head.
It's a real squeeze.
Yes, so you can see the tunnel. It's not big.
Yep.
For big guys like us.
Okay.
Yeah.
First chamber, huh?
Yes.
I can really see the difference already in the different cut. I mean, it's much cleaner.
Much cleaner, yeah.
Much more of a grand entrance.
We were 700 yards from Zoser's Step Pyramid, down beneath the desert sands, slowly making our way to King Titi's burial chamber, where the world's first religious text was written in stone. And this straight tunnel was the only way in. After the king was buried, 3 huge granite blocks were used to seal the passageway, creating a primitive security system. It was state-of-the-art for the time, but the pharaoh's greatest protection wasn't stone blocks. It was these mystical spells, never meant for our eyes, hidden beneath the desert for millennia.
Oh, wow. So we're in the center of the pyramid.
Exactly in the center of the
Look
pyramid.
at this. This whole wall, and I guess it would have gone around the corner here.
It's everywhere.
Everything is hieroglyphics.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, this is incredible.
This antechamber, the second of three, holds more than 400 hieroglyphic spells known as the Pyramid Texts, the earliest religious transcripts in the world, and the first to be carved into pyramid walls. They are all mystical instructions meant to be read by the pharaoh after his death.
Please tell me what all this means in general.
Actually, this is like a magical spells to help with the soul, to help the king in afterlife. Magical spells to help the soul to be resurrected again, because the pharaohs were believing the soul will go away.
Yes.
And we're living between the northern stars, and the soul have to come back again to recognize the body. So there's many, bad gods will stop the soul to come back again. It's like a fight or a conflict between good gods and the bad gods.
Right.
So this magical spells will help the soul to come back again.
The pharaohs lost their power. They had seen the tombs of earlier dynasties robbed of the royal treasures that were supposed to guarantee access to the afterlife. So they turned to these written spells instead of luxurious treasure as their new theft-proof tickets to paradise.
For instance, if you have a look here, you can see his name, Teti. There's a half bread, and the feather's eye. And the name was written in a circle. Why? Because the circle means endless, continuous. So if you got your name in a circle, you will live forever. Right. You will be resurrected in afterlife. All the spells dedicated to Teti, the owner of the pyramid here.
Originally, these cryptic symbols, the world's earliest collection of prayers, were painted in vivid colors. But over 2,000 years, trace amounts of humidity in the desert air ate away at the paint.
So if you use your imagination, a very colorful wall.
Yes.
Very colorful star across the side.
Yeah.
This is a brilliantly panoramic place.
That's right,
Gorgeous.
yes.
The ideas in the pyramid texts evolved over hundreds of years into a remarkable document, an eerily detailed roadmap to the afterlife, known as the Book of the Dead. It was written on papyrus, an early form of paper, and placed in the coffin to help guide the deceased on their last journey, including a final step that is still familiar to millions today.
Everybody's believing he will stand in front of God, and he swear, I'm honest guy. I didn't do anything bad to my neighbors. I never polluted the river Nile water. I never looked to my neighbor wife. It's a great instructions, okay? At the end, they are waving his heart. And if he's a good guy, he'll go to paradise.
I see.
If he's a bad guy, you have to get punished.
So the same idea of sin existed here in the Egyptian times as it does later in Christian and all other.
I believe the religion is just one tree, and we have many branches,
Exactly.
Islam, Christianity, Jewish, so it was the main tree.
So we're looking at the roots right here.
Here we are in the roots.
King Titi's body was stolen long ago, but his instructions to heaven remain in perfect condition. These ancient carvings are the oldest known form of religious writing. The Greek myths, the Bible, the Quran, all began here.
You're really looking at the history of writing here as well.
Yes.
That's the earliest form of human writing.
Yes.
To understand the real difference between the step pyramid and this man's pyramid, the Teti pyramid, you really have to look at the wall. I mean, all these magical spells, the priorities had changed, a different time entirely. This is not big, bold engineering like the step pyramid. This is a more mythological statement. I mean, the times had changed. You had a pharaoh who was looking for a different way to help himself into the afterlife, and it's all right here, the magical spells that he would use.
Up next, lurking beneath a church, a super fortress.
I've never seen a bigger Roman fortress in any of the Roman places I've seen, including Rome.
And later, the crumbling remains of a well that held off the Crusaders.
We really want to see it, but you're nervous because this is really, really dangerous.
For nearly 2,500 years, the pharaohs ruled over Egypt uncontested. Then, starting in about 600 BC, new empires began to emerge on the scene. First the Persians, then the Greeks, then the most powerful of them all, the Romans. Miles of fertile farmland made Egypt a hot property, fiercely fought over, changing hands a number of times. Now, the only way a conquering army could make their new property safe was by building an impenetrable fortress. And in the 2nd century AD, the Roman Emperor Trajan did just that, erecting a massive one right on the banks of the Nile. Now, over the centuries, the Nile River has changed its course dramatically, and Cairo has grown up around it, pushing the great Roman fortress deeper and deeper under the streets.
Modern Cairo is one of the most important cities of the Arab world, but it wasn't always so. For about 2,000 years, it was a humble trading city, until the Romans placed a strategic garrison there. Called the Babylon Fortress, it was made to guard grain shipments along the Nile.
I'm in the oldest part of Cairo, the ancient heart of its Christian community, Coptic Cairo it's called. I'm meeting Ahmed Abdullahi. His rare access to take me down into the ruins of the ancient Roman fortress.
We're done, my friend.
Today, the last remnants of the pagan fortress are hidden under one of the oldest Christian churches in Cairo. Ironically, the religion that Rome tried to stamp out went on to build right on top of the crumbling ruin, and has preserved this relic of the empire's glory days in Egypt. But 2,000 years ago, this was a Roman stronghold, and we would have been in the middle of the superhighway the Romans were guarding, the River Nile.
So, where was the Nile River?
Here.
When there was a Roman fortress here.
Yes.
And then it moved somewhere away that way.
Yes, to the west.
Gotcha. All right. So we're walking in water here.
The course of the Nile has changed over the last 2,000 years, but one of its main sources still begins deep in the Ethiopian highlands and flows north to the Mediterranean. It was the major artery of transportation and the main source of water. Annual flooding deposited rich silt on the vast Egyptian plains. With this massive natural irrigation system and year-round warm weather, Egypt became the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. When the Romans redug an ancient canal to the Red Sea, this spot became the nexus point to control all of Egypt.
All right. So this is, I'm looking at Rome right here.
Yes.
The church above is called the Hanging Church because it was originally built using 2 enormous towers of the Babylon fortress as a foundation. The rest of the 60-acre ancient stronghold is now buried by the modern neighborhood.
Man, it's just gigantic when you see it up close, isn't it? What is this?
This is...
Oh, I can see the figures here.
This is some stones have been taken from the earlier building.
From the pyramids?
From the pyramids.
Nice,
Yes.
really? So I'm seeing all these figures that look like hieroglyphic.
Using the ancient pyramids as a convenient quarry, Roman builders pillaged limestone blocks, then laid brick on top of them.
Interesting. That's cool. Whole cross-section. I mean, this is ancient to us. This was ancient to them. This is the way in here?
Yes.
So nobody gets in this place. This is the entrance into the Roman fortress ruins down below. You can hear the bats squeaking to the bats up there. Wow, there's a lot of bats up there. Oh, look at this space. Incredible. This is original Roman architecture we're standing in.
Yes.
As an occupying force in hostile territory, the Romans needed a fortress that was a self-contained city. The sprawling complex spread out over 60 acres. The outer walls were 40 feet high and almost 10 feet thick. The towers of the main gate were 100 feet in diameter. The iron, or water gate, led out to the port, and the only access was through one of these 2 huge fortified portals.
So we are standing here at the massive gate. This was the water gate entrance to the fortress, yes?
Yes.
So I'm looking out there in ancient times, and that's a canal. This is water right out
Yes,
here.
yes.
And these are all the same, the old features. This all the same brickwork. This is the original stonework.
Yes.
And I see a major
slot up there for a gate to come down, yes?
Yes, yes.
So it's like an old medieval castle.
Yes.
The fort boasts its own ox-powered grain mill and industrial-scale bread oven, all to support an occupation that lasted nearly 6 centuries. So this would have been used for military purposes? This would have been a bastion of a defensive tower, yes?
This was called arrow slides.
Arrow slides.
Yeah, in order, yes.
Shooting your arrows. Okay. The fortress and its fighting force were put to the ultimate test in 640 AD, when an Arab army invaded Egypt. More than 5,000 horsemen descended on this fort, and a bloody 6-month siege began. They knew if they could get this fortress, they would kill Rome.
And also notice, this fortress was considered one of the strong fortresses in all Roman nations in that period.
I have never seen a bigger Roman fortress in any of the Roman places I've seen, including Rome. The Roman defenses held until Arab spies discovered a weak point. One of the massive wooden doors was set on fire. The Arab forces swept in, and Roman rule of Egypt was over. In the 7th century, the Muslim armies invade and take the place over, and from that moment on, Cairo becomes what we know it today as a major capital of the Arabic world. The Arab army camp outside the walls of the fortress became the new center of the city, and the Roman fortress was turned over to Christians and Jews. Once persecuted by the Romans, these religious minorities were taxed but tolerated by the Arab rulers. Over the centuries, they built and rebuilt, eventually burying the enormous fortress of their former oppressors. If you can understand this church, you can understand so much of Cairo. Roman fortress down below, 2nd century AD. 4th, 5th century Christian church on top of it. Totally symbolic, because the Romans had persecuted the Christians for centuries, and then they get to build a church right on top. Coming up, a sultan's deadly lair. I just got to get a sense of how deep this thing really is. Nice. And later, a priceless discovery under the sand.
Is this actually gold that I'm looking at? Yeah, this is gold. The whole face was covered with gold.
This is the Nile River. It's been the source of all life in Egypt from ancient times to modern. It is the reason there was a civilization here in the first place. But when the great Arab conqueror Saladin came here and erected his citadel, towering high above the city and far from the river, he ordered the water be brought to him by digging a massive well 250 feet into the earth.
In the 2nd century AD, the Romans built their fortress on the banks of the Nile. 1,000 years later, the powerful Sultan Saladin, the man who retook Jerusalem from the Crusaders, erected his stronghold 2 miles to the east and 250 feet above it. I met with Ahmed Abdelrazik, an expert on the 800-year-old Arab fortress. Ahmed?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you, sir.
You too. Today, the Citadel is a sprawling 60-acre compound, housing mosques, museums, and battlements. But in 1176, this was the linchpin of Saladin's defensive fortification against his greatest enemies, Christian Crusaders. So this fortress actually stands as a guardian between the attackers there and Cairo to his rear.
Between the Crusaders' attacks and the capital behind it.
All right. Now, what had changed so much in warfare that they had to build a fortress way up here?
I think because the weapon had changed.
The weapons, okay.
Exactly.
Because they had catapults and things like that.
Exactly.
In the 12th century, the advent of powerful weapons like the catapult, crossbow, and ram caused fortresses to become bigger, stronger, and basically impenetrable. A siege could last for months, if not years, as the invaders tried to outlast the armies within. So Saladin's citadel had to be a vault, nothing in, nothing out. The citadel had an above-ground aqueduct, but it could be easily diverted or poisoned by enemies outside the gates. To ensure a safe and unlimited water supply during a lengthy siege, Saladin's men dug down 300 feet to reach the Nile River water table. So if you're fighting
Siege warfare. Desperate for water. You gotta go deep down and find it.
The shaft has been off limits to the public for decades because of the inherent danger of descending a centuries-old open well.
Here we are.
Okay. So things get dark from now on, huh?
Yes.
Ooh, they certainly do. So nobody gets down here, do they? I mean, this is not
Except us, you and me.
Okay, good. No wonder.
The well was built in two parts. We had reached the bottom of the first section, the guts of the operation.
This is the bottom. Oh, man. Awesome. Look how deep we are.
It's about 50 meters.
50 meters. So we're only about 150 feet here, so we're not even all the way down.
No, not yet.
Okay.
We still have another 40 meters.
So the water is even deeper.
Deeper than that.
Deep beneath the modern citadel above, the first square shaft plunges 150 feet into the limestone bedrock. A staircase carved out of the rock wraps around the shaft. A floor separates the upper shaft from the lower shaft, which descends another 130 feet down to the water table.
Come on right here, I'm showing you something.
Okay, over here. Oh, yeah, look at that. Is this original?
This is the original water wheel.
That is so cool. This is the actual works of Saladin's water system.
Sure.
Oxen, who lived their entire lives underground, turned the water wheel, which engaged a pulley system of jars up to the midpoint from the bottom. Once the water got to the midpoint, it was dumped into the cistern, where another pulley system of jars dipped in for the final leg up to the thirsty residents above.
Boy, this shaft just goes another, how deep?
Another 40 meters.
120 feet, all the way down. I can see water down there. Can I drop this? I just got to get a sense of how deep this thing really is. Nice.
40 meters.
40 meters down.
With this water supply, Saladin's army could hold off a Crusader siege for months. Saladin, a brilliant tactician who had retaken Jerusalem from the Crusaders, knew the citadel was the key to holding Cairo and all of Egypt, but he never lived to see it completed.
He didn't live right here because before finishing the whole building, he died in 1193.
So after Saladin, every ruler in Egypt, every ruler here in Cairo, lives in the citadel for how long?
From the 12th century until 19th century.
Wow. So 600-700 years, this citadel was the main focus of royal life in Egypt.
And through those centuries, wells like this supplied the citadel. Even when the pulleys broke down, a backup system consisted of donkeys, making the journey down and back up the shaft. It's a dangerous trek for man and beast alike.
Ahmed has just stepped ahead here just to figure out if the staircase is actually stable enough for us to go down into this. We're walking down into the stairs that spiral around the deeper shaft that runs 120 feet down further. But it's very dangerous. You okay?
Not sure.
All right, here goes nothing.
No, but you have to be very careful.
Okay.
It's real.
Really careful, okay. Not kidding around careful. Yikes! If you slip, you're gonna go right down, right into the shaft, so hang on tight.
Stick to the wall.
Stay to the wall.
Watch out your steps.
Okay.
It's very dangerous.
Yep.
Stick to the wall. Stick to the wall.
Look at that. That's the water right down there. I am staying close to the wall. This is really cool. I mean, really good of him to bring us down here because we really want to see it, but he's nervous because this is really, really dangerous. Okay, I'm all right. That was good. So wait, this is water here. Hold on. This looks like solid ground, but it's really water. We're at rock bottom, so to speak. I mean, this is 280 feet below the citadel, okay? were down at the level of the Nile River. I mean, that's what it took to create this enormous fortress on top of such a high hill. There were a number of these shafts all around the citadel. This is the last one remaining. I mean, you're seeing something from the Middle Ages here in its pure state. It's remarkable. But if this place had been under siege, had the Crusaders come and attacked, Saladin and his armies would have been fine up here for a good long time, because they had the essential thing they needed to survive. Water, right there.
Coming up, solving a 2,000-year-old mystery.
So the water of the oasis actually killed him.
Exactly.
For as long as humans have wandered this desolate part of the world, they've considered death to be a beginning rather than an end. It's why the pharaohs were mummified, why they built the Great Pyramids, all of it to ensure safe passage to the afterlife. But no one was certain what happened to this tradition after the golden age of the pharaohs, until, not so long ago, a donkey's hoof broke through the ground into an ancient tomb crammed with perfectly preserved mummies. But these weren't pharaohs, they were commoners. This recent discovery is considered the most significant in Egypt since King Tut's tomb, and it's buried right beneath these desert sands. 200 miles southwest of Cairo, the Baharia Oasis has been a crucial stop on the trade route between Egypt, Libya, and the Sudan for thousands of years. Slave traders, camel caravans, and even world leaders passed through here. But today, we're going to visit some residents who never left. I'm meeting with Dr. Zahi Hawass. He's the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities. Basically, if it's ancient and Egyptian, this guy's the man. Dr. Hawass.
Hello.
My honor.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
You too. Now, we are at the site of the tombs here, yes?
Yes.
In the oasis, the Baharia Oasis.
When Alexander the Great came from Memphis, he crossed the desert from Siwa to Memphis, and he stopped here.
I see.
And he built the only temple that he built in Egypt is this temple. Then this site became very unique because the steps of Alexander the Great stopped in this place.
According to Dr. Hawass, Alexander stopped here on his way from a desert oracle who would proclaim his divinity. But in 1996, a donkey's hoof crashed into a lost tomb, and archaeologists quickly realized they had hit the jackpot. How many mummies do you predict are down there, or
This cemetery contains 10,000 mummies.
10,000 mummies?
Covered with gold. Why they're buried here? Because to be near Alexander the Great. They wanted really to have the blessing.
They wanted to be near the great man.
Exactly.
The tombs of the golden mummies are off limits to all visitors, but we've been granted extremely rare access to view them. This is the way in. Mummies down here. Oh, the mummies they're right here.
Yeah, this is just like a family tomb.
Okay.
About 41 mummies I found here.
Incredible.
And beside the mummies, we found necklaces, bracelets, pottery.
Some of these mummies date back to 300 BC, bridging the gap between the golden age of the pharaohs and Greco-Roman Egypt. Dr. Hawass is still piecing together the clues to how they lived and how they died.
You can see that this mummy is for a lady. Her son is buried above her.
Okay.
And you can see she had a crown.
Yes.
Her face discovered was gold. Then maybe they were died in an accident or anything together. I took only 15 mummies from here and I put them under the X-ray. I found out the average age of death among the 15 mummies were 30 to 35 only, and they were very healthy. But why they die early like this? And I found out that the well in the oasis, the water has iron. and the iron affected the bones of the people, and that's why they die quickly.
So the water of the oasis actually killed them.
Exactly.
Is this actually gold that I'm looking at
Yeah,
here?
this is gold. The whole face was covered with gold.
Ooh, I just want to clean it off, but I can't touch it. This is gold leaf underneath, creating this entire death mask. The process of mummification, the expense of it, is an indication that these people were doing very well in life. This was a rich community that could afford a very meticulous process.
Yes, because of the production of wine only. The sales of wine here was very important because everyone loved this Bahri. Like, the Napa Valley wine, everyone loved it. And this was the Napa Valley of ancient Egypt.
The pyramids preserved and exalted pharaohs. But here we can see the life stories of ordinary wine merchants and their families.
You can understand the relationship between families. A lady was buried here catching the hand of her husband. Other lady was completely makeup. Maybe she was a bride. She died before she get married.
So you can tell the whole story of the person.
I was able to write the story of the people who lived at the oasis from just looking at every mummy. And I felt that mummies were like alive. Looking at them, we can know the history of every mummy.
When you first saw this mummy, did it look in this same condition?
It was in a better condition. We know all these tombs were completely filled with sand. Then it took us days of excavating, and to discover a tomb like this with mummies also, it's dangerous.
Sure.
Because when you open a tomb like this, you need to leave the tomb for 2 days until the fresh air will get in and the bad air will go out.
Ancient mummies are petri dishes for deadly molds that can cause bleeding in the lungs. And the ammonia and formaldehyde used in the mummification process can be trapped in sarcophagi for centuries and released when the long-sealed tombs are opened.
And you never shave when I'm excavating, because if you shave, these mummies make germs that you can't see. If you enter the tomb right away, the germs can kill you.
Even 3,000 years old, 2,000 years old.
The same. And that's why people call it the curse of the pharaohs. And think, but really, if you are a careful archaeologist, you will never have this kind of things.
Dr. Hawass and his team have uncovered and opened 15 tombs here.
We're going down there?
Yeah.
All right.
They are lock boxes containing proof that the ancient funerary traditions of the pharaohs were still practiced in Roman Egypt.
They call this mummy Mona Lisa of the Oasis.
How beautiful. How is it that this was preserved, the face was preserved so well and the rest isn't?
They did care about the face a lot, because the face is very important. The soul will never recognize the deceased without the face.
The idea was that the soul leaves the body after death. When the body is then interred down here, the death mask is here for the soul to recognize its own vessel. Comes back to this body, reoccupies it, takes the treasures, the money in the hands, everything, and therefore has the equipment, the wherewithal to enter back or enter on into the afterlife. So this person is long gone. What's fascinating to me is that they're almost like a mortuary business.
Yeah, it is. This in ancient Egypt, death made Egypt. Death built Egypt.
Right.
Because for them to do the quest of immortality, they have to build temples and tombs and pyramids and mummification and gold and all this kind of things.
Sure. And these people knew that the pharaohs had a method of immortality. They wanted the same thing. It's so moving to see this. I mean, these are the real people here. And if you stand in silence, I mean, it has such a profound feeling to be among all these people who have been here for thousands, literally thousands of years, and they're still here.
For thousands of years, pharaohs, conquerors, and commoners have all searched for eternal life, and they found a certain immortality here in Cairo's underworld.